Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be working on the COE cab project some more, and that's probably going to be the primary focus of this video. So my work table has kind of become a catch-all in between all these projects that I've been working on. First thing I'm actually going to do right now is completely put everything away and kind of clean up just to have a fresh start to the week. All right, so I got the tools put away for the most part. There is still quite a few out of my toolbox because, to be perfectly honest with you guys, I still have not taken the time to really organize this toolbox and set it up the way it should be done. You know, just keep focusing on these projects instead, but I will get to it, don't worry. And I think I've decided I'm gonna go ahead and spot weld this guy together. And the reason why is I'm gonna end up flipping this cab over onto its face, and when I do that, I just would like less failure points. I'm not gonna weld it to the body because, like I told you all before, I would like to remove this entire assembly to be able to sandblast inside the cab really well and also prime inside the cab really well. So that's gonna stay out until that happens, but I don't think I'll do any harm just by welding the center seam here and then also welding it to the firewall. So we'll start with the center seam. At least I hope it's not gonna be a mistake. I have been wrong before. All right, I got the two floorboards welded together, and I think I'm just gonna stop there. I got a feeling that welding it to the firewall right now might be a mistake. I don't know how well it will come out in one piece, and I don't wanna find out the hard way. So we're just gonna hold off on that. And now I can flip the cab over and we can start getting that rest of that floor out. Okay, so the primary reason why I wanted to be able to flip the cab over before continuing to remove the floor is because it starts to get real dicey as soon as you get past the doors. The entire back area here has been patched before, and I'm not going to keep it from here. Actually, even this part of the door jamb, a lot of it is just MIG weld sprayed in there and grinded down a whole bunch, and I just can't live with that. So I'm not gonna waste a whole bunch of time making a paper template or using tape to pull a template from the body. All I really need to do is figure out how long of a patch I want, and I'm measuring out to about 12 inches from the door jamb to here, and then how high up I want it to go. So we're basically just gonna cut out a couple of rectangles, and we'll throw it in the English wheel a little bit with a really low crown wheel just to kind of create that low crown. And then we will tip the edge over for the bottom here and start to shrink it throughout this corner to get the shape we want. So let's get our metal cut out. I've got both of our corner patches cut out. This is going to be their orientation, actually hanging down a ½ inch, about there. And all we're going to do is line it up with the corner of the door jamb, and we'll make that part separately. It'll actually be easier to make it by itself, I think. And yeah, this piece is basically going to wrap around, and I'm going to bend it right now just to kind of give you an idea. All right, so all you really have to do is make sure that you line it up with the door jamb where you want it. just wrap it around the body a bit, and you'll kind of get the general shape. And then you can kind of just form the rest of it over your knee. It doesn't have to be exact. I'm gonna roll it in the English wheel anyways, and that's gonna flatten it out a lot at first. Pretty close fit, but once we English wheel it, it'll change a lot. So we'll get started doing that, and we'll just make a couple passes, see where we're at, and then just keep going nice and slow. These are my English wheel lower dies, and this one has the least amount of crown, and you can see as it gets down the line here, each one has a bit more crown to it, and this one is pretty round. So we're gonna go with this one, which is like second from the least, and just start with that and see where it lands us. I've decided to flatten the piece out just for ease of doing this, and I've already made one pass going this way, and so I'm gonna go this way now. And the basic idea is don't continue tracking in the same path and work your way down the panel evenly. I'm still not that great at it, but practice will make me better. Not perfect, that's for sure. There's definitely a little bit of a trick to it. And then I'll just flip it around and go from this side again. This is progress we're making. The fit is actually really nice, I think, anyways. It's pretty even up and down, and what I wanted to show you is when I bring it over here and set it on this corner, look at that gap. And that's due to the prior repair shrinking the metal really bad right here. So I've been rolling this panel for probably about 5 minutes, and I've got pretty good pressure on it. And you can see just how little that has done to it. I mean, that might have already been in the panel before I started rolling it, honestly, but it's a slow process for sure. Another few minutes in the wheel, still not a whole lot of crown. But I think that's all right. We don't need a ton of crown in this panel. We're gonna start to bend it and see how it fits. I'm gonna have to take my template for the passenger side off of the driver side due to the fact that the passenger side is so distorted from the previous repairs. Now that I've got the shape that I want in both my panels, the next step is gonna be to fold over the 1/2 inch flange that we accommodated for the bottom half of the cab here. And the way I'm gonna do that is just mark a 1/2 inch on each side and use a flexible straight piece of metal and just trace it on. A little something I didn't account for, my panel was square on all 4 corners, so when I line it up with the door jamb, which is 90 degrees to the bottom of the rocker there, my gap for my panel on this side is a 1/2 inch, and then on this side it's like a 1/4 inch, and that's because the cab gets bigger as it goes upward, so it's causing the panel to twist upward on one side as this wraps around. So I think I just have to trim the door jamb flange at a slight angle to account for that, and we should be good to go. So I think before I trim anything on these, I'm actually gonna fold the flange over, because I have a hunch that when I start shrinking the flange in order to make it curve, I think it might do exactly it might fix the problem that I'm having, because it's gonna make the bottom of the panel shrunken and smaller, and the top of the panel will still be the same size, but we'll see what happens. I can always trim it after. Got my 1/2 inch marked, and all I'm gonna do is just run it through the bead roller and slowly fold the flange over. It's gonna distort the panel quite a bit as we do, because as the flange goes over, the panel's gonna want to straighten out. So as I'm folding this edge over, it's starting to create these tucks, I guess I would call them. And what I'm gonna do to remedy that and allow the panel to still maintain a curve is to use my shrinker right here and just take a couple bites throughout this area, and that should smooth it all out. I'll show you when it's done. All right, you can kind of see how it smoothed it out, and it's also brought the angle back a bit. And we're gonna have to do that a couple more times as we continue to fold the edge over, because more of them will pop up. Got it folded over about 80%, maybe 90, I would say, and you can see how much that flattened it back out again. So we'll just throw her right back in the shrinker there and watch how much curve it regains. Okay, so what we do with the shrinker and the stretcher from here on out is pretty much gonna dictate what happens with our corner shape here. And it's gonna be a lot of trial and error. It always is. So this is what it's looking like after a few bites into the metal, and we'll just check and see how it's fitting. It actually might be shrunk too much already, so that's okay though, because once we finish folding it over all the way, I have a feeling it should even out real well. We're getting there. I went and threw it back in the stretcher actually, because I took a little bit too far with the shrinker, but it's a pretty easy fix. I might actually take out a little bit more, but we're pretty close. It needs some shrinking up here towards the door jamb for sure, but this is coming out pretty nice, I think. I just thought of a really good idea, because the bottom of the cab has been fixed before. It's kind of a really rough template, so I realized I have the perfectly good skirts that go underneath the cab, and I went and grabbed one to kind of see where I'm at, and it's giving me a much better idea of where I need to go with this shape. I can see now that it should be a really nice gradual curve. I'm probably gonna have to stretch it here some to open it up, and then shrink it in this area to cause it to curve inward, and this area here as well. One thing I am gonna do before I try and do all that is try and define the flange a little bit more, see if I can't get a sharper 90 in it with the hammer. All right, so here's the fitment on the cab. It's looking pretty nice. Little fine tuning to do. Well, now it's got a lot of fine tuning to do, but it fits on this this skirt really nice. And I even lined up this tab right here. Oh well, There we go. If that's nice, see. I think I tweaked a little bit from that fall. However, yeah, I lined up that tab and it lines up exactly with where the bolt hole should be here, and that's a good sign. So that means that this side is pretty close to being done. All right, so I've got my cab corner matching to the cab pretty well, and it was matching pretty well to the skirt here, but it didn't fit on the corner of the truck real well. So I made a couple adjustments, and now it seems like it's overly curved. You can kind of see how it's sitting on the flange in that spot. And if I rotate it to where it's straight, it pulls it a lot in the back. So I'm pretty sure I'm gonna wanna base the curve of this off of the skirt, because the skirt sits directly below this. And as I've already said, the truck's not a real good base to get a reading from anyways. So what I've decided to do is hook up my gantry crane to the handles, the grab handles on the truck. I'm gonna lift the cab up in the air enough that I can test fit the skirt on the bottom of the cab and see what's really going on there. All right, I can't see if you guys can see that on account of how I have to hold this panel up, but hopefully you can. And that shows you the problem that I'm kind of dealing with right now. The skirt is lined up real nice with the rocker panel here. And then once we get to the back, it seems to flare out a lot compared to the back of the cab. So I'll have to, I don't know. You can see where the original flange here used to sit, and it would sit straight like this, but the previous repair work hammered it over to meet what they did. So the skirt probably would have never fit properly anyways, but I think I've got a pretty good handle on what needs to happen, and my fit up is still looking pretty good. So just a little fine tuning, I think, and then I'll move on to the other side. Started working on the passenger side corner, and I'm only in it about 30 minutes, I would say, and we're pretty much there already. I haven't test fitted on the cab yet, but it fits the curve of the skirt really nice. I've got my mark for where the hole is, so we're gonna go ahead and transfer this over and see what we're looking like on this one. Got my magnet. I didn't do anything, okay. Still needs some finessing, I would say. And also, nah, we'll be all right. Yeah, we'll just have to twist it a little bit, I think, and it should straighten. Yeah, so all it took was a little tweak. I pushed this corner in and kind of pulled this corner outwards, or this corner. I think you guys know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, you can see that it fits pretty well. That's just a low spot right there in this actual sheet metal from being repaired before, so I'm not too concerned about that. One thing that I am a little bit concerned about, let me grab my straight edge here, is I believe the cab is supposed to have like a downward pitch all the way on the back, or at least be flat maybe. But you can see it's got like a really bad low spot in it, and that goes all the way across. I'm guessing that's just from the work that has been done, so I'll have to do something about that too before it's all said and done. And now I'm gonna start working on getting measurements for our back panel, which is going to go from this corner and all the way up to here and all the way over and connect to this corner. And it's gonna be one piece, and we will be welding the corners to it before we weld it all in as one assembly. So let's grab some measurements. I've come up with kind of a design I'm gonna go with for the rear panel section I'm making here, and I've penciled it onto the back of the cab. I'm just gonna come from my corner patches here up and wrap around this and shoot over to this other side and do pretty much the same thing. I'm still not real sure what I'm gonna do about these, but I'm gonna keep thinking about it and figure something out. The panel overall width is, I think, 49 3/4 at its widest, which would be up here at the upper points. And I was kind of worried because my sheet over there, it looks like it's only about half a sheet left, and sheets are only 48 inches wide, so I was thinking I might have to make it out of 2 pieces, but I lucked out and I have just exactly enough left for this next phase, so I don't have to go to the metal yard. So what I'm going to do for this back panel is I'm going to leave the panel wide, since it's only 3/4 or 1/4 of an inch wider than our widest necessary width. Anyways, I'm going to take my time and trim it really nice to try and get a really good fit. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut it off in one piece, and I'll fine tune everything from there. First step I'm taking on the back panel is going to be to fold our edge over, and I am going to leave the panel long for now. I can always trim it, but yeah, I'm going to throw this in the bead roller and fold that over now. All right, now that we've got the edge folded over, you can see it created a pretty good bow in the panel. And I already did shrink the flange a little bit to straighten it out, but I'm gonna go ahead and try and get it as flat as possible. To get a bow like this out, I found you don't really have to like press down on the handle real hard. Just going across the panel in equal spacing, doing a light press, evens it out pretty well. Better switch sides. All right, it's pretty even just from that one pass. So we'll go ahead and throw it on the back of the cab now and see what it needs to do. Love this table. Already looking 100 times better. It looks like we'll just need to put a light curve into it on each corner to meet the cab corners that we've made here. So probably should overlap a little bit like that, and then do some trimming, and we'll be on our way. I've got the back panel shaped up pretty well. What I did was just marked where it's gonna meet our cab corners, and I kind of followed out to about the end of the structure here. That's where the curvature stopped on both the skirt for the truck and the back of the cab. So I just shrunk it a little bit through here on each side, and you can see it's pretty close. It'll just take a little bit more massaging to get it perfect, and we still have to trim it, of course. And what I'm working on now is trying to make this this part of the panel nice and flat, and I'm doing that through shrinking and stretching. I'm just taking my straight edge here and looking for gaps in between it and the panel, and what I'll do is I'll just mark this section like this and put a SH for shrink, or that, and ST for stretch. I went through and marked all the high spots, and after I shrunk those three areas, stretched those three areas just a little bit, you can see now we've got one big low spot. So now we have to make another pass in between the length of the ruler, more so in this area, and just shrinking it ever so gently. I'm not pressing the handle hard at all, just kind of gently pushing down on it, and it's definitely moving the metal. Yeah, I can see it's already bowing it probably. Should have spaced mine. So you can see I went a little bit too aggressively in this area because now we have a big crown. So I'll grab my Sharpie and mark that area and flip the shrinker stretcher around. All right, now we're stretching again because we shrunk it too much. And I'm not even gonna press on it gently this time, just very lightly. A slight peak right there around 29. And other than that, it looks like a little low spot right there. Right now I'm just getting ready to weld this entire joint and see how much warpage we get. Definitely got some warpage going on there, but it doesn't really look like anything too serious. We'll just go ahead and throw it in the English wheel and roll it a little bit with one of the flatter profile wheels and see what happens. I got the joint completely welded up, and I rolled it in the wheel a couple of times as best I could. I really can't get down here very well at all, so I've started hammer and dollying the joint, and it's flattening out pretty well. Everything is going back exactly to where it's supposed to be, and when I say that, I'll show you what I mean. Initially, when I welded this panel, it shrunk so much here that it caused this corner to fold over more, and it pulled the center over far enough that these are our marks lining up the panel. We have like almost a ½ an inch gap, well, maybe 3/8 of an inch gap still, and that's after hammering it out quite a bit. So it's still gonna need a little bit more massaging in order to get this corner to contour properly again, but we're getting there. All right, so I'm not a pro, so I can't give you any real solid advice on this. It's not something I do every day, but I've got my second corner tacked on, and one thing that I've found to be pretty important is to get both surfaces nice and level with each other and as little gap as possible, and that will help minimize distortion, and also it will make it real easy to clean it up. Just the seam pre-planishing. It didn't warp a lot on this side. We did a little bit better. So it should only take minimal hammering, and then we can smooth it out. Got the weld planished a bit. It flattened out pretty nice, and I went ahead and trimmed off the excess that we're not going to need off of the larger piece here. And now I'm just kind of looking at it, and probably going to be doing this for a while, just trying to figure out what my next step is going to be. I do have to trim the panel here around the door openings, and I also have to figure out the wave that has been created in the back of the cab. I believe there's a high spot down here, and so this entire panel is supposed to sit down a little bit more, but it's kind of hard to tell at the time. So like I said, I'm just gonna be looking at it for a while. So just as I kind of predicted, right here is a very large high spot, and you can see when I push down in the right spot, I can actually get the entire panel to pop. There we go. And that's because there's too much metal in this area. So what I need to do is, well, we're gonna be cutting that area out anyways, but if I wasn't cutting it out, I'd probably take my oxyacetylene torch and heat this area pretty hot, and then hit it with some air, and that would cause that spot to shrink up, and I believe that would straighten it out. But I don't think we're gonna have to do that, since we're gonna be removing most of that material anyways. Well, I'm still thinking about exactly how I'm gonna tackle this whole project here, but I have decided that I'm going to trim off more excess metal in areas that I don't need to repair. The previous repair work on this cab corner only comes up to about here, so I'm only going to replace to a little bit above that, and just leave the old stuff alone. On the other side, it's pretty bad all the way up to the height of the patch, so I think we're going to have to leave this one full height. And then I'm just going to trim out our door jamb openings and start cutting the cab. I'm not really much for shouting out name brands and whatnot, but I can't recommend these shears enough. If you're thinking about working with sheet metal at all, they're just amazing. I mean, that probably would have taken me at least 5 minutes by hand. Took me 10 seconds. And it's really clean as well. I think I've got an idea of what is going on with the back of the cab here. Most of, or the entire back should basically allow the ruler to sit flat, but you can see in some areas there's really big low spots, and I am attributing that to the way that the corner here was designed. So the first thing I'm gonna do is cut some of this out and see if I can't get my replacement panel to sit down lower like it needs to, because I believe this is holding me up at least a ½ inch. So that's what I'm about to do right now. Break out the old trusty angle grinder and see if we can't get this kind of taken apart a bit. I would like to at least try and separate part of the skin from this hoop. I'm pretty sure the way that this guy had done this is he just kind of jammed this tube in there. So what I did was I cut it up here and cut it around. I'm trying to leave as much of the original stuff as I can, at least to kind of have as a template to lay my new panel down on. So that's why I'm doing it this way instead of just cutting it all out. But you can see when I wiggle it, it looks like it's about ready to come out. So I'm just gonna grab some channel locks and give it a little twist. All right, well, things move a little faster than I was planning on, but I've tried to cut the complete cab corner out up to the door jamb here, and unfortunately when trying to remove it, I've realized that this body line that has been beaten through here is also welded the entire way. So I'm gonna have to cut this off in like 2 pieces and see where we're at after that. We're in. I found out where most of my sand went. But now I'm going to try and remove this piece here, and hopefully we'll be able to maintain the under panel here, which the side skirts bolted to, but that we're gonna have to do something about that as well because all that hardware is destroyed. All right, well, I've got my sheet metal laid back on here, and I'm looking at it and I'm seeing this like large gap in the center there, which it shouldn't be like that. And I'm kind of just thinking about why this is happening when my curves contour the cab perfectly and they fit the side skirt well. Maybe I'll have to get in here and flatten it out more throughout this area to bring this center section down some and even it out, because that's just not gonna work. So I've been working on the back of the cab here and mainly just been going over it with a flat edge here, and I've been locating all of the low spots, which are gonna be the blue circles, and also the high areas, which are the red marks. So the reason why my panel's not fitting real well is because we've got real high corners right here and real bad low spots here and also here. So that's where we're at right now, and I believe what I'm gonna have to do is start to cut out all of this interior pieces so that I can remove these high spots first of all, and then also try and raise the low spots. So that's I'm firing up the plasma cutter right now, and we're gonna start ripping some stuff out of this cab. So the old back support brace has left the building, or cab I should say. It was quite a lot of work cutting this out because you have to cut through several layers of material and all kinds of stuff in the back of the cab. But now that we've removed that piece, our problem seems to have disappeared. So we're gonna throw our replacement panel back on here again and see what it looks like. I'm extremely happy to report that that was indeed our issue. There's still a small low spot, but the cab can move up a good bit right there, no problem. And we're gonna level out across the board real nice. Still got a bit of a low spot there, but we'll hammer it out. I got our template trimmed out, and I've got the panel in place roughly where it's gonna sit. A lot of our bowing issues are gone, and what little is left will be easy to fix once we finish weld everything. So gonna go ahead and start cleaning up the edges here and fine-tuning everything. I've been working on fine-tuning the fitment of the panel, and it's really starting to get to a point that I like. I've also trimmed at the door jamb openings, and the next step we're going to be tackling is replicating the bead roll in the back, or the, I guess it's not a bead roll, but replicating this into our lower panel here. And the way I'm going to do that is take a couple pieces of scrap metal and run them through my dies here at varying separations. I can like move them further apart to create that same kind of lip, and just test it until I get something that's close. This is my first test, and you can tell that it's not wide enough, so I'm gonna open them up a little bit and run another pass. I think I figured out the right spacing. Now I just need to fine-tune exactly the width, and we should be good to go. I've got my template drawn onto my patch panel. Basically I'm gonna run it full depth from here to here, and then once I hit this line, I'll back off the pressure to kind of just make it a smoother transition, hopefully. We'll see how that works out. Right now I just got to fine tune my bead roller because it's got a little slack in it. So I've been practicing my bead roll, and I've got it pretty much where I'd like it to be. I think this is going to fit real well, and I'm going to go ahead and adjust my markings for it, and then we'll start rolling this panel and see what happens. And you can see this is all my test pieces, just to make sure that it fits as perfect as I can make it. I think I'm all dialed in here. I'm going to be rolling on the inside lines here and easing off the pressure once I hit this line, 1 full revolution on the wheel that applies the pressure, and hopefully it does a nice taper. So I'm going to pull it off now and start rolling it. So far I've gotten 2 bead rolls in, well, half of them, and they're lining up pretty good. I did run into a couple issues in that I once again forgot the limitations of my bead roller, and I can't fit this entire piece through there all the way. So in the center section here, I'm only able to run a short amount, but on the outsides I'm able to get maybe 2 inches more. So what I'm doing is same deal, just running full depth and then tapering out in this section and this section here where I put lighter pressure. And so far it's looking pretty good. They're lining up. I had to go ahead and pound out the areas that I couldn't reach with the bead roller by hand. Looks a little ugly, but it'll clean up when we sandblast it. And did get a little bit of warpage from bead rolling it as well, so I attempted to shrink it in certain spots to see if it would even out, but it kind of just made it worse. So what I'm going to do now is get it all tacked in place and then worry about the warpage once it's one piece. I just finished getting the panel all tack welded into place. It's fitting really nice. There's a little bit of warpage, but it's going to warp even more when I weld it, so I'm just going to deal with it after, and we'll see where we're at. It's not too bad as it is, but I'm gonna go ahead and finish welding the panel in right now, and I think I'm gonna leave a small section close to the door unwelded because I'm gonna have to like fine-tune that a little bit. So it's gonna be a little bit of welding. See how easy it can melt through right there. Oh yeah, let's probably jump to a different spot. So I'm gonna jump to a different area on the panel because you can see that heat affected zone is getting bigger here than the first weld I did. So we're gonna move over that way.
Get all fucking set. There we go.
Got about 90% welded up, and took on a lot of warpage, but I was expecting that. It's just going to take quite a bit of hammer and dolly work to even it back out. All I really have to do is just planish the weld a lot, because essentially the reason why it warped like this is because these edges shrunk, and so it kind of like scrunched it all together. But if I hammered enough, it'll stretch it out and everything will lay back in the position it's supposed to be in. But it's looking real good. So next update is finishing these the floor here and smoothing out the back. See you guys then.